Hey, everybody out there in a sane and wonderful world. This is Paul Elam with a Voice for Men, and I am Paul. And
I'm Paul too. Hello, I'm Paul from supportforguys.com.
yes, you can find a link for that in the low bar. But this is Better Call Paul's. Bad name, two old men with gray beards, but we have a few things to say. I think his gray beard is longer than mine, and my gray beard is grayer than his. We're going to talk tonight about problem women. I mean, we used to call them bitches, but we'll just, for the sake of pseudo professionalism, call them problem women. And the question is, how do you stay away from them? And of course, let's be honest from the beginning. There is a large percentage of men, and I'll expect the other Paul to correct me if he disagrees with this, but there is a large percentage of men, far too many in my opinion, that couldn't give a rat's ass about once they're sexually aroused or sexually interested, it doesn't matter. But for those of you, and there are many of you, who have been around the block a little bit, or maybe younger guys that can still nonetheless manage to think from the neck up, problem women are exactly what it says. They're problems. And they can be huge problems, huge problems. Guys go to prison and die over problem women. And so why don't we talk tonight about ways to detect them, to know that problems are coming, and what to do when you see it, what signs to look for, how to interpret it, because nobody teaches men this stuff in this culture. You want to give us a start, Paul?
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying there, Paul. I think it comes down to, I think for a lot of men, we're capable of trusting our gut instinct on these things, but we've kind of had that conditioned out of us. There's a lot in society, there's a lot in the media, that causes men to doubt themselves instead of being strong. And so I think that there's a lot of men that put up with, I wouldn't even say things that are unacceptable, because I think there is a point before that. It's like it's like the little trickles of water from the top of a mountain that grow and grow and come together and become a river. And I think there's ways to look at it while it's right up at the top of the mountain, to stop yourself getting in the situation of being lost in the river, because by then you're in neck deep and it's too late.
It can be too late for simple solutions, that's for sure. I mean, it's seldom too late for some kind of solution, but when your solution involves $100,000 and a couple of attorneys, those aren't the solutions that you want. At least I hope that you want. But, I've been thinking about this a lot. I look back at my own life, Paul, and I was just thinking about one particular girl today that I ran around with for a little while in my early 20s. And I remember seeing her. She's just this really, really attractive, beautiful young girl.
Of course.
Yeah, about 20 years old, and, crazy as a shithouse rat. But I wasn't about to notice that at the time. But I remember she came walking in, and she came to the area I worked in, and she came walking in the door, and our eyes met when she came in the door. And, she had that sparkle in her eye. And I was like, oh, man, now I know she really likes me. Right? Yeah, she had that twinkler in her eye. And that was, there wasn't any subtle indicators of anything for me at that moment about there's possibly danger here. All I knew as a young man was that a woman that I was magnetically attracted to clearly was attracted to me. And that was it. That was the end of the dialogue in my head. Nothing else mattered. And if something had presented itself, something subtle, I would have overlooked it and probably wanted to punch anybody who tried to point it out to me.
For sure.
And so that is a real challenge. I mean, and some of this stuff does come with age. You get a little older and you figure out, wow, there is a lot of women in the world. You're not going to be alone the rest of your life if you pay attention to a warning sign and send one packing.
I think that's the thing there, Paul, because it's easy for us old farts to lay down the law on this sort of thing, but it's because we've been through it. We've lived. If guys are watching or listening to this that are in their early 20s, I've got 20 years on you. I've done all the dumb things that you've done, and hopefully I've learned a bit from it. And I think things are a lot harder for guys in their early 20s than it was for me. I think there's a lot more pressures on them to.
Oh, hell yes.
To accept. They're being conditioned from a very early age, particularly if they're raised by a single mum, that, happy wife, happy life. And, fuck that. It's your life. You're the one that is responsible for your own happiness, not a woman.
And they get that from when mom ain't happy, nobody's happy. They learn that directly from their mothers. Happy woman means you're allowed to be happy as long as she's happy first.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's causing a problem for young guys is that there's less rough and tumble, and I know there's lots of things in schools about anti-bullying, and I get the intention. I think it's a good intention, but when you leave kids to sort their own shit amongst themselves, they learn in the company of their peers. They learn what works and what doesn't, and so by the time they hit 18, 19, they've got some faculty to deal with the world, and I think a lot of that's been lost, and I think a lot of it has been particularly lost on the female side of the equation, where there are pretty much no checks and balances for bad behavior left in society. And so what you've got is you've got men that have been conditioned to accept whatever women say is right, and perhaps have some sort of guilt on their shoulder about the bad, evil nature of men. Men want to do the right thing, I guess, but they're going about it in the wrong way by condoning and accepting behavior that is just not permissible, I think, between two adult people. Forget the gender. The way I've seen people, particularly women, treat men is just disgusting.
Oh, yeah. And I want to acknowledge one of the things you've said. It is really easy after, you've had your day with women, and plenty of, well, no, I won't go into that, because let's just say that there was plenty of sexual opportunity in my younger life, and plenty of trouble as a result of it. But I think part of what you said too is this sort of protective environment. We have men who are by their instinct problem solvers. That's part of the reason I think that men take on problems in relationship and are willing to own problems that they create, and they're also willing to own the problems that their women create, is because men are by their nature instinctively prone to fix things. And if things are broken, they assume that it must be their fault. Yep. And at the same time, you've got third wave feminism teaching them they're wrong about everything. And then you've got a culture that doesn't allow their risk taking anymore. It's amazing. I may have a gray beard. I may be an old fart, but at least I was able to ride a bicycle before it required a football uniform and a feather.
Don't get me started on childhood, Paul, because we used to just disappear at sunrise and come back at sunset.
Yeah, exactly.
No question.
Yeah, ours was you better be in by dark.
That's it.
And don't mess up the house when you come in, because we know you're going to be dirty from having been out there climbing trees and running around in the mess. And that was expected.
And you know, you learn a lot more falling out of a tree than someone telling you not to climb the tree.
Yes, you do. I could say that. Oh, man, I can't imagine some of the stuff we did when I was a kid, catching water moccasins, poisonous snakes by the tail. Not exactly the smartest thing in the world, but I did manage not to get bit. But anyway, more to the point, women broadcast, I think, Paul, that they're going to be a problem. If men
For sure.
if men are willing to read the signs, women tell you, not subtly, but once you learn the signs, they tell you with a bombastic, strident band, marching band, neon sign glowing bullhorn in your face, I'm going to make you miserable. And they do that by letting you know all kinds of things, like what they expect from a man, while telling you that they don't need one. They do that by letting you know that they're the center of the universe, by letting you know that if she ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. You can find out a lot about a woman by simply telling her no to something.
Oh, yes.
Flat out no.
Yes, that's
and they will tell you, because I'll tell you what, if that woman goes cold and stiff and acts like, okay, we'll see about that, that's your relationship with her for the rest of your life.
well, it doesn't. It doesn't get better. You know, so I mean, that's a good early one. If a woman says, "I'll come and meet my friends," and really, what guy wants to do that? What guy? I mean, seriously, you're only thinking of getting a root, as we would say in these parts of the world. If the only reason you'd be going to see her friends is that she thinks more of you and say you maybe get a blowjob later that night. Whereas really, you don't want to go and meet her friends. So just say no. And if shit goes down, which, I guess a normal woman would understand that. An unreasonable woman would, as you say, either give cold treatment or flare up. And if either of those two things happen, you can bet your ass that it's not going to be forgotten. And this is one of the things that happens in relationships is every incident isn't completely forgotten. And whenever another one happens, it reignites. And so, we're talking about women here. I'm not going to say what men are like, but women, when an incident happens, it will ignite every previous incident of the same flavor or a similar flavor or even a dissimilar flavor, and make the current issue so much worse than it actually is. And that all starts with that first time, as you say, that you say, no, I don't want to do it. I think of it this way. If a guy friend says, do you want to come to the ball game on the weekend? And you say, no, I'm just going to chill out. There's no animosity there.
Right.
It's okay.
And if you're riding with a buddy down the street in the car and you pass by a hooker, you can say, how much for both of us? But you can't do that with your girlfriend.
No. Which, one of the early signs, I mean, it's, I think what we're getting onto there is ways that women control men and control them in every way. We're talking about bad women here, whether it's controlling your behavior, controlling you, I would say spiritually, not in a religious sense, but the way you connect and view the world.
And yourself.
The way you have friendship. Yeah, and yourself, of course. The way you conduct your life. Because remember, there was something about you in the first place that she found attractive, and then it's being drummed out of you. And there's very early signs of control. Like if you're a guy that likes swearing and a woman says to you, do you have to swear too much? Well, the only answer is fuck yeah.
Absolutely fucking right. And this is, I think, where a lot of guys feel. I want to go back for a minute to the thing you said about nothing being resolved and the women's tendency, and they do have a tendency to accumulate perceived wrongs And then when called on their own shit, they use those to deflect away from what they did, right?
Yeah.
They'll do that in order to not own their shit. They will drag up something that happened 6 months ago that you thought was long gone, and they'll remind you that you're imperfect in a way to distract you. And where guys fail the most at that is they don't understand how to confront that and deal with it. Guys just sort of fold because they don't want to see themselves, despite our reputation for being violent bullies. Most guys don't have the capacity to strenuously argue with women or to defend themselves. They end up caving a lot on things when they shouldn't.
And I think that starts off slowly sometimes as well, Paul, because, pretty easy going, laissez-faire, don't sweat the small stuff, and so you let things slide. But they build.
They do, and there's also, I used to call this the sort of a 90-day window. In the first 90 days of a relationship, it's 9/10 of it is, biochemistry. Your hormones are pumping. You are partially psychotic, both males and females, early in a really intense romantic involvement. You don't see the other person's fault, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's my experience with women. I mean, both parties go through that, and it eventually wanes away, but you see where it happens a lot of time is one day, say after 70, 80 days in the relationship, when things are going great, you're fucking your brains out, your friends are complaining, hey man, why don't you hang out anymore? And you get what they're saying, but you're too busy, taking care of sex and companionship with a woman. Well, and everything is smooth. Everything is copacetic. You're not arguing about anything. And then one day you hook up, you get together, you're sitting on the sofa talking, and all of a sudden she goes quiet. And you know something's wrong, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, because the truth is that nothing's wrong. Truth is that the infatuation is wearing off, and this is the moment where the attempt to control is going to start really showing itself. And she'll sit there and say, oh, nothing's wrong. And of course, that really helps, right? That really helps. And then guys tend to go, no, come on, tell me what's wrong, what's happening? Because they feel that peaceful place, that romantic, sexual, energetic place that they've been at with a woman is now under fire, and they want it back.
Yeah.
And so they struggle real hard. And that is your first mistake, guys, is when you buy into that and start chasing the dragon and start trying to get her to tell you what's wrong. I can tell you what's wrong in that situation. It's just normal. The romance is worn off. Now you're going to start seeing some of her true colors. And part of her true colors is to keep you walking on eggshells around her emotionally. And that is where, rather than try to find out what's wrong, you need to find out what's wrong with her.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, well, in my experience, from around about 6 weeks, that can start. And the thing is, as a guy, you do have options, and I think the kind of esteem and loving yourself, you do have options. That when that starts, if you go down that path that you're describing, Paul, you are going to erode yourself.
Yep.
The other option is to bite the bullet. Yeah, you might experience some emotional pain the first couple of times you do it, but just finish it. Get out of it. Lick your wounds, learn from it, and try again if you want to.
Or you can also, in the context of that, whatever relationship that is, I call it the Terminator move. When she's clearly got something on her mind that's bothering her, probably she doesn't like the fact that you swear too much, or she doesn't like that t-shirt you wear, or she doesn't like one of your friends, or something else she wants to control. That's what's bothering her. And you ask her once, so what's wrong? And she says nothing, and says it in a cold, terse tone of voice, then get the Terminator out on Blu-ray and pop it in and say, okay, and make some popcorn. And let her know you're just fucking fine. Even if you don't feel it, it's important to do it. Because just like Paul said, that is, he said the result of that is you go down the road of losing yourself and of being controlled. That's the intent. She may not even know it consciously. And a lot of women don't know this stuff consciously. But the intent of that little song and dance routine where she's obviously peeved about something but won't talk about it, the intent is to make you beg so that you can fix the problem. There you got to come back to your own nature and not fix it. Watch the Terminator. That'll send her a message.
It's a move to elevate her status and lower yours by, as you say, begging for that feeling back. I heard there's I don't know how solid this theory is, but it's interesting. Is that this kind of thing happens after 3 months because, from an evolutionary point of view, she should be pregnant by now. She should be pregnant and getting ready to rear a child. And if that hasn't happened, then you're not the appropriate mate for her. And so there's some sort of subconscious thing to push you away or control you.
I firmly believe that, to turn you into a beta supporter.
And the control, I mean, I see it as a way of, I think that women are jealous, not just of other women, but they're jealous of where a man spends his resources, whether that's money or time. And so if you find yourself in the situation where the things that you used to do that were acceptable a couple of weeks ago, like maybe you'd have a hobby, or maybe you'd go out, or maybe you'd listen to music, or whatever, or maybe you like traveling on your own, whatever it is. If those things are being questioned, then I think that's a sign that she doesn't want you putting your resources anywhere else except this one piece of pussy here. It's hers.
That reminds me, let me tell an old war story here. This is funny. I knew a guy, this is 25 years ago. Really a guy in his prime. He scooted around all the time on this Softail Harley Davidson. Really nice looking bike. Very independent type. And this is back in the days I smoked. We were taking a smoke break at work, and one of the nurses came out to that area, and she didn't even smoke, but she was there to hit on him. And she started talking about him and his bike, and hoping maybe she could go for a ride someday. And he turned around. I couldn't believe this, because these were not days that I had a lot of like red pill discussions with guys. But he turned around right in front of me. He said, "Yeah, I know you love that bike." He said, "Yeah, in 3 months, you'll be bitching about it." And telling me I ride it too much. And I thought, man, you just became my hero.
A few years ago, I bought an old Jaguar off an ad in the paper, and I went for a test drive with this guy. And it was a 1986 Jaguar XJS V12. It was a lovely car until it caught on fire one day. British Electronics. But I was driving with it. I was saying, "Man, you must have been slaying the chicks in this thing." And he said, I met my wife in this as well. We used to go out on dates with it. That started me thinking. And then when I did the exchange, it was him and his wife turned up, and I said, "You must be sorry to leave this go." And she piped up straight away and patted her stomach and said, "No, he's got a new baby now." And I thought, "You bitch, you've taken the fucking thing that one of the things you found attractive to him and destroyed it." And it was like $4,000. I mean, what are they going to do with $4,000? Buy a fucking couch or something?
But it wasn't the money.
To get rid of.
It wasn't the money.
It was not the money. It was the symbol of the man that he was, and that he could potentially attract other women or have fun with, because he must have spent hours in the garage on this thing, all detracting away from her.
Oh yeah, and the fact that he, even if he didn't spend hours with it, the fact that he had something that he was proud of, that he liked, that he wanted,
Coveted.
she wanted that shit gone.
That's right, because then he can just sit on their brand new couch and look at her and watch Pride and Prejudice and the fucking Notebook all night, and she'll still get the shits about something. Because
No
the other
doubt.
thing, whenever you, if that Terminator movie is one I'm going to have to remember. That's a good one. But whenever you concede that first point, and you might get that thing back for a while that you were looking for, it is never ever enough. Never. Once you've backed down once, you're weak. That's it. And I think some women are strange. Even though it's a power game, when you back down, they will respect you less.
Oh, absolutely. And if they really had that much respect for you to begin with, they wouldn't have went for the power move in that way.
Yeah, and there's a friend of mine, and he narrows it down. He calls it the cunt principle. And whenever those moments occur of those nothing's wrong, what's wrong? Nothing. The thing that's wrong is at that precise moment in time, she doesn't just think you're a cunt, she knows you're a cunt.
Yep.
And whenever the ego knows something, there is nothing you can do it. You can be backing down and begging and scraping until the cows come home.
Oh, well, and you know what the thing is that most men do. Um, I used to do regular groups with men, Paul, and one of the things I asked them was that how many of you have ended up pulling your hair out and wanting to, smash the sheetrock in your home, trying to figure out what it would take to satisfy her, because nothing you do is enough.
No.
And except for the gay dudes, every male raised their hand.
Yeah.
They all know that experience. And the fact that they answered in that way told me that they weren't intervening in that stuff. If they got to the point that they wanted to pull their hair out and smash sheetrock, they were doing something wrong. It wasn't in the way they were treating her. Well, at least not directly. They weren't doing anything to her that was wrong. It's that they, rather than stand up for themselves and pull a Terminator move, and I used to tell people, and still do too, that the Terminator move has two phases. One, you put the movie in. If she's not going to let you enjoy it, you either get her out so you can, or you go to a buddy's place and watch Terminator. But either way, you're going to watch that goddamn movie. And you're not going to let her interfere with it or interfere with your enjoyment of it. And even, like I said, I know, believe me, when guys do this, especially the first few times, they're really distracted. They're not really paying attention to the movie. They're hurting. Because again, like I said, they want that sort of magic back. They want that friendliness, that comfort level that men don't get in very many places. But she knows by taking that away, she can put you like a puppet on strings. And again, she may not even know this consciously. This may not be conscious stuff on her part. It doesn't matter whether it's conscious or not. It's up to you to intervene and to do something about it.
Yeah, I think the subconscious thing is interesting because it's something that I would say to a guy in a relationship where you're having arguments, what the fuck are you doing, brother? Why put yourself through that? This is the thing that's been pervaded through society. I mean, you've got happy wife, happy life. You've got to, if you can't accept the worst of me, you don't deserve the best of me. Fuck off. Just be a normal, level-headed person, and it will be fine. Don't start these games. The thing is to spot it early on, that's the way we started. And that first instant of I'm okay and not being open and authentic in discussing what's on, because, you know, everyone has shit that goes on in their lives from time to time, and maybe you are a bit pissed off. Usually not with your partner, usually something is happening at work or some external thing. But if you can't, if there's a lack of honesty at that early stage, which, yeah, 6 weeks, 3 months, what are you doing? What do you think will happen if you get that feeling back? How long will it last? What will you do next time? Are you going to have a line in the sand that you're just going to keep conceding every time, just moving the line until you're treading into the water, or are you going to pull a Terminator move now?
Or yeah, and until you're treading water. And listen, guys, understand this: men kill themselves at 4 times the rate or 5 times the rate, depending on the country you're in, than women. When it gets down to the process of a breakup or divorce, that rate drop goes up to 10 or 11 times the rate. Why? Because men are socially isolated during that time, and women have maintained their social support. And a lot of times, part of the control in relationships, and it's, by the way, a hallmark of every abuser, is that they isolate the victim, right? When she starts criticizing your friends, when she starts alienating you from your family, from other important people in your life, she is setting you up to be at suicide risk. That's not to say that it isn't your responsibility for what you ultimately do, but the fact of the matter is, if you put all your emotional eggs in one basket and you're counting on one person to bestow you with your self-respect and your self-esteem, or whatever you want to call it, and then that relationship comes to the end and all you've known is 5, 6, 7, 8 years of handing it all over to one person, and they finally say, well, you've outlived your usefulness, goodbye, you're going to be in a really bad place.
And you know, that's just reminded me of something I hadn't really thought about there, Paul. Because when I used to work as a suicide prevention counsellor, which is like a hotline that people call, generally speaking, the guys, because one of the things you'd have to do in that role is check on what support people have. There's a few other things you check, but what support do you have? And now you mention it, the guys had far less support than women had available. And when I was going to say personal support there, but you know, I can broaden that out actually to medical services, whether it's psychological or government run. The guys were on their own, man. They really were, compared to women.
Oh, and yeah, we know about the misandry in the mental health system and the neglect and of men's issues in that area. And then you compound that with men who, for instance, you know, they don't have DV shelters for them, none of that. And then you have men in relationships, and I'm not talking about just abusive relationships. I'm talking about a lot of relationships that will pass on the outside as normal. The men have given up their friendships, their interests, their self-respect, everything, trying to fulfill that happy wife, happy life bullshit.
If and I can just, yes, it's a problem solve, isn't it? You know, if I can just make her happy.
Yeah, and if I can make her happy, then I'll be a success and worthwhile as a man, and then I'll believe that she really cares and all that. And of course, a lot of guys live in abject misery over that. And then when she finally drives the final nails into the coffin on the relationship, it's sometimes, all too often, like I said, 10 or 11 times the rate of women ends up being the final nail in his coffin, literally. That's worth paying attention to, guys. That's really worth paying attention to, no matter your age. If you're 18 or 28 or like me, something obscene 8, you want to pay attention to what the future of your relationship is going to be. And she's telling you what those things are. If she is cold and stoic whenever she doesn't get her way until you finally cave in and capitulate, then get it. That's your relationship. And you got to make a choice about whether or not that's acceptable to you. And it's easier to make that choice early on by far than it is 3-4 years into it when you're brainwashed with the abuse.
And imagine this: if you're having early arguments because you leave your socks on the floor or something like that, and your partner's emotion just switches off completely or becomes angry or vitriolic. Think how much worse that is in years to come, 10 years if you're in California, when you're in a divorce court and that person that you wanted to fix is there with all the firepower of attorneys and her women friends in the ear who have all been through similar shit. You should take him for this. This is the advice that she'll be getting. You can take him for this. Why settle for that? You deserve that. You deserve all his shit. You deserve to take his children away and make sure he never sees them again. Think about that. Think about what you're getting into. You can see it early on. If she's like that over something meaningless, think of the day where either she pulls the plug completely or you pull the plug. It's fucking game on, brother.
Yeah, if you think she's controlling over your motorcycle, you wait until how controlling she is during the process of a divorce or a breakup. That's where your friends find out that you were beating her and that you're a rapist, and all kinds of stuff. The false accusations start flying. Your life gets miserable very, very quickly. And just like we're pointing out here, during those situations, and I'll tell you, during one of my divorces, I was sitting in the courthouse area outside the courtroom, and here she came in with like 7 women.
Wow.
And she was holding a flower.
Oh,
and looking very sad.
It's amazing. I mean, our fucking when I went through that shit myself, and the lawyers coached me saying, "Look, don't show any emotion. Just sit there. No matter what you hear, you just sit there. Just let it all go through to the keeper. Don't worry about it." And and I can see the sense in that, because you don't want to appear over irrational,
Right.
over emotional, or
you
rational.
don't want to appear to have any feelings about anything. It's the only safe place for a guy to be in court is emotionless.
That's right. On the other hand, in the red court, boy, dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned there about all the accusations that come out. There was a case that happened in Australia recently, which may have run across your table there. A former White Ribbon ambassador, a guy called Hazim El Masri, who was a very famous rugby league player, very, very well respected. He was about to go to court on charges of domestic violence from his second wife, which he maintained his innocence. The press wasn't too kind. There was the usual questions about sports people being violent and all that kind of thing.
Oh, and entitled.
Sorry?
And entitled. That's one of the things they love to throw at sports figures is that they're entitled and privileged.
Oh, for God's sake. Oh, my God. But the things that saved him, one was, I was very surprised that his first wife came out and said, "Look, there is absolutely no way this guy could have done this." And I had to take my hat off to her for coming out and being public and saying about that. And I don't know what happened in their relationship, but that was a good woman talking. She had really nothing to gain from saying that. And then the second thing that seems to have led to the prosecution dropping the case was his lawyer claimed that he had a recording of his wife saying that she made it all up. And that, in combination with the lack of any forensic evidence whatsoever, made sure.
And of course, they did not press charges against her.
I haven't seen anything happening I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, Yep. But it can happen to anyone, and that's a guy that's got the funds to mount a defense as well, because this is the other thing that, if you're I'd say if you're a very poor, if you haven't got much money, you probably haven't got too much to lose. If you're very wealthy, you can afford to get a decent-ish result. But if you're in the middle, you're fucked. You're absolutely fucked. you're probably going to have to walk away. But these, as you said, these are things that are telegraphed early. So maybe we should talk about what things you can spot early on, Paul.
Well, I tell you what, we're
opposed,
probably going to have to do it
as opposed
next week. We're up against our. You want to maybe continue this discussion next week with a list of small things you can look for?
Oh yeah, for sure. Are we out of time already, Paul?
Yeah, it's running upwards of almost 45 minutes now, and I have another video to shoot tonight. So I better. This is my second hangout. I just got through doing one with Dean Esme, and by the way, he said to say hi to you. He's a big fan of yours.
No, I'm just gonna use you and Dean as a little case in point about something, because one thing that you can spot with women as a teaser for next week, perhaps, is that it's okay to have a difference of opinion about something. It doesn't mean shit's falling in on the world. If you're having a difference of opinion about, and I'll use the example politics because I'm guessing that you're more right of the middle and Dean's more left of the middle. And I saw a thing where you can discuss those things, and it's not a big personal bloody thing. But if you try doing that with the wrong sort of women, that's where you're going to start finding out that you have to agree with everything she says.
Yep. Dean is, we're different politically. Dean is a religious man. I'm an atheist. We get along just fine because it's not critical that we see eye to eye on everything in life. And with the wrong kind of woman, I think that's a great teaser for next week, is one of the things about her is that if you see something differently than her, you're not just wrong. You're the fucking enemy.
That's it. What kind of fucking man are you?
Yeah. What do you mean you wouldn't vote for Ted Cruz? Okay. That's the deal. Let me run down a couple of things before we go. If you look in the low bar to this, first, please subscribe. I've got and a little bit of personal disclosure here. I'm about 80 or so subs away from 1,000. I want to do a thank you for the first 1,000 subs that come up, and in that I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what I'm doing at An Ear for Men. In more detail. I am, and I'll give details on this when I do that video, but I'm stepping back from some of the activism and getting a lot more invested in advocacy, which is two different areas. And I'm going to be investing a lot more in An Ear for Men in the future. As a matter of fact, shooting another video for this channel tonight on this subject in a loose fashion. But you'll also find in the low bar, after you subscribe and get me to that 1,000 subs, you're going to find a link to Paul Batey's website. He offers fee for counseling services there in Australia, and I'm sure worldwide.
Absolutely.
And link to his website there. Please visit it and check out his good work. There's also a link to An Ear for Men and to the Ear for Men Patreon, as well as the book Say Goodbye to Crazy, which I co-authored and is, I think personally, and you don't have to take my word for it, go read the reviews on Amazon. It's getting a huge amount of praise as being a great guide for men as well as women when it comes to getting crazy bitches out of your life. So I highly suggest that. And with that, we'll plan a show and we'll have our list of giving you the early warning signs, and there's a ton of them. We'll probably bring at least 6 or 7 apiece, and we'll go over those for the next show next week. You got anything you want to add, Paul?
No, I think that's it. Thanks for the chat, Paul. See you, everyone.
Thank you. See you guys next time. Bye-bye now.